me what I'm doing here.
You're going mad.
Alright, so now I'm going to do my review of The Killing Joke, the Batman animated film that came out in 2016, directed by Sam Liu and written by Brian Azzarello. And I also did a watch-along, watch party for this animated film just the other day, so if you haven't seen that, go check that out. And if you have seen that, then I'm going to try not to be completely redundant in this. But no doubt I'm probably going to say the same things I said in that watch party, because I've really turned my opinion on this movie. The first time I saw this movie back in 2016 after Batman vs. Superman came out, I believe this film came out, a few months after. And yeah, I was disappointed like most people when we first saw Batman the Killing Joke animated film. I, like most people, just wanted the comic book straight up. But what we got was more of a Batgirl story. And the focus was more on Barbara Gordon instead of Batman and Joker's relationship and Joker's origin. Which, all those things are still in this animated movie. It's just they shift the focus at the beginning to Barbara Gordon. And that's where most people had the problem with this movie. Obviously, a few years later, and after watching this animated film a few more times, I start to understand why the Barbara Gordon stuff is there at the beginning. And, there's a few good reasons that I've said before, and I'll say it again right here. Number one, the book is very short. The book is only about 20 to 30 minutes to read. If you go watch the motion comic, it's only about 30 minutes long. And this animated movie is about an hour and 16 minutes long, so they had to fill the time with something. And if you read Batman the Killing Joke, Barbara Gordon's only in the comic book for a grand total of 3 pages, which is almost a shame because this is the book where Barbara Gordon becomes paralyzed and she eventually becomes the Oracle. Well, she gets paralyzed in this famous graphic novel. And before you even read Batman the Killing Joke, you already have to know who Barbara Gordon is and what's her relationship to Batman and everything. Because the book never tells you any of that. You just have to already know who Barbara Gordon is. And in this animated movie, they don't take any liberties with people's knowledge about Batgirl. They come out in the first 28 minutes, and it's all about how Barbara Gordon Batgirl interacts with Batman and how they have a sexual romance. Which doesn't really bother me, because in this version, Barbara Gordon's an adult, and so is Batman. So them having sex is just a way to show how much they care for each other. So when the big moment happens later on, when Barbara Gordon gets shot in the back and gets paralyzed, it's even more shocking because you see her relationship with Batman. You see how they're struggling to be partners after they've been intimate, and you wonder if they can rectify things. But before any of that can happen, Barbara Gordon gets shot and becomes paralyzed. So I feel this subplot really just expands on the Killing Joke story. It expands on Barbara Gordon because in order to care about her being shot in the film, you have to know where she's coming from. You have to know what kind of character is, and you have to like her a little bit. And I feel like they do accomplish that in this movie. And it makes the moment where she gets shot even better. And remember, they had to add a lot of time to this film. So I am happy that they just added something to the beginning of the Killing Joke rather than messing up the entire story of the Killing Joke. Because the second we get to the actual Killing Joke story in this animated film, it is shot for shot the graphic novel. Word for word. They don't cut out anything. Maybe a line or two here or there, but mostly everything is kept intact when we get to the Killing Joke story, and they don't take any liberties with that. So as far as adaptations go, it is pretty spot on. And if you really hate the Barbara Gordon stuff in the first 28 minutes that sets up the story, I would suggest you just skip it because it is non-essential for those of us who know Batman and Batgirl already. But if you're a newbie, you want to learn about the lore, you can watch this animated movie and you'll essentially be all caught up on Barbara Gordon becoming Oracle and stuff like that, right? And as far as the animation goes, I think it looks all right. It definitely looks a little better than the animation they have been doing for their shared universe. I think it looks a little bit better than that. And obviously the voice acting is top notch in this animated film. You got Kevin Conroy's Batman. You got Mark Hamill as the Joker. Very top notch voice acting. And the music hits when it needs to. So, they really pulled out all the stops for this animated film. They had Brian Azzarello, one of the famous comic book writers of all time, come and write this animated film to adapt The Killing Joke into a feature-length film. And all things considered, I think it's pretty good. You know, when I first watched it, I wasn't really feeling it. But as I watch it more and more, the film just makes more and more sense, and it fits together real well. And it's not insulting what they do with the characters. They don't treat the relationship with Batman and Barbara Gordon with kid gloves. This film is rated R. And all things considered, would you rather them add a new, opening to The Killing Joke that doesn't actually change anything about the book? Or would you rather them completely change the book and rearrange all the scenes and just take out the stuff they don't like and put in stuff that they rather put in, just like they did with Superman Red Son? Which one would you rather? Would you rather a faithful adaptation that just expands on the beginning part of the book, almost like a prologue? Like, you could look at the first 28 minutes of this animated film as a prologue to The Killing Joke. It really is non-essential, but it makes the movie a full experience, which is something that can't be said for other animated films they've done, like Batman Hush, where they take the story and they just completely reshape it to whatever they want to do, and they don't really care about being faithful to the original book. And while watching this Killing Joke animated film, once we get to all the Killing Joke stuff, it really feels like they tried their hardest to stay as close as possible to the book. But once again, they had to expand and make the story longer in order to make it a feature-length film, because I think that's what The Killing Joke deserves. It deserves a feature-length film. And in the process of expanding the story of The Killing Joke, they make some decisions, good or bad, however you want to look at it. Either way, they make decisions to make the story more of a Batgirl story. We don't get many stories with Batgirl in it in animated form, so they really just killed two birds with one stone. They gave you a dead-on Killing Joke adaptation, and they also gave you a Batgirl movie for Batgirl fans, which they are out there. And as far as adaptations go, I think it's definitely one of their better ones, especially when you compare it to their later adaptations with Batman Hush and Superman Red Son. This Killing Joke animated movie is a lot more faithful to the book than any other adaptation since. So you gotta give them props where they deserve it. The Barbara Gordon stuff doesn't bother me at all anymore. I think it actually makes the movie better as a movie. It makes it a full experience when you watch it. So, based on all that, I think I probably would give it like an 8 out of 10. It's still not the best adaptation DC Animation has ever done, but it's not a bastardization of the comic book, which is what Batman Hush is. And if you think they, bastardize this Killing Joke animated film, I really got to question whether or not you've read the Killing Joke book, because you can't deny, once we get to the start of the book in the animated movie, you cannot deny that they stay 100% faithful. Every scene from the book is in the animated movie, and they even add a little extra. They even expand on some stuff that the book doesn't expand on at all. And one of the best comic book writers of all time, Brian Azzarello, wrote this animated film, because there's not many writers that could keep up with Alan Moore, because Alan Moore is one of the greatest comic book writers of all time, and his Killing Joke Batman book is one of the greatest Batman stories of all time. So for them to just go out and get Brian Azzarello to come on and expand on Alan Moore's story just shows how dedicated they were to trying to make something that's faithful to Alan Moore, but also trying to make something new for new viewers and make an overall good movie, which is something I feel like they're lacking in the more recent DC animated films. But anyway, that's it for now. Obviously, if you watch my watch party for this movie, you already know my feelings about this, so this might be a little redundant for some people, but for those just coming across this review, go check out my watch-along. You can watch the movie Batman The Killing Joke with me, and you could see my reactions to all this. And I will say that I do enjoy The Killing Joke animated movie the more I watch it. I think it's pretty solid, especially if we compare it to a lot of their more recent animated films. It seems like The Killing Joke was like the last time that DC Animation was trying to be faithful to the books and trying to be as accurate as possible to the books. And they got a lot of backlash for it when this movie came out, because a lot of people just watched the first half hour of the Killing Joke animated movie And I feel like a lot of them just like threw up their hands and said, oh, they ruined the Killing Joke. This has nothing to do with the Killing Joke. And they probably didn't watch the rest of the film, I imagine, because you watch the rest of the film and it's pretty dead on to the Killing Joke. So I definitely recommend giving it a second chance if you haven't seen it in like a couple of years, and just take it at face value. You know, they had to make the movie longer. And when you think about how much more the movie could have been fucked up, you know, how many bad things they could have done, and then you look at what they did do with Barbara Gordon and expanding on her character just to make the moment where she gets shot even more impactful, that seems like good changes. That seems like something you want to do. That seems like the only thing missing from the actual Killing Joke story when you read it. Learning about Barbara Gordon, you know, because she just gets shot real quick. And unless you know who she is, you're not going to really care that she got shot. So I felt like, you know, if they're going to expand on anything, if they're going to change anything about the Killing Joke, adding an opening prologue sequence that's about 30 minutes long that really goes into her character is the best thing you could do. Because they could have really messed this up in thousands of other ways. They could have, you know, they could have split the book in half, and they could have had, you know, a bunch of different shit intercutting every scene and changing panels and changing lines from the book. They could have did that, but they didn't. 99% of the Killing Joke book is in this animated film, and something had to be added to make it a feature-length film, and I think they did the best possible thing that they could have done. And yeah, I could definitely envision them doing something way worse than what they did in this animated film, because I've seen it with some other animated films. But anyway, that's it for now. Comment below. Let me know what you think of this Batman The Killing Joke animated film. Remember to watch my watch party for it if you haven't. It's in the description below. If you hate the movie, then you hate the movie. I mean, there's nothing anyone can say to change that. But if you've only seen the movie once and it's been a few years, I would recommend you go back and watch it and see if you get anything else out of it. Because I have a feeling you might like it more than Batman Hush. But anyway, that's it for now. Comment below, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.
Where is he?
Why aren't you laughing?
All it takes is one bad day.
Intimidation is a key, Randy. An individual who's intimidated fucks up.